This is Business and Economy, and I am Ile Emeje. Sustainability of critical sectors on major economy is priority to countries of the world worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Nigeria is not left out. Today on the program, we shall be looking on the adverse effects of the pandemic on the aviation sector. And my guest is a macroeconomic policy analyst. But let's take business news first. Stay with us. A sum of 1,689,757,489 naira 87 kobo has been received by the federal government through designated commercial banks, Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) and the Treasury Single Account (TSA) as donation for COVID-19 between 1st April to 31st May 2020. This was disclosed by the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris, in a press release signed by the Director of Information, Press and Public Relations of the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Henshaw Ogubike, noting that the donation was to support in eradicating coronavirus pandemic in the country. The breakdown indicated that a sum of 792,121,613 naira 89 kobo was received from 1st April to 8th May 2020, while a total of 897,635,875 naira 98 kobo was received between 9th to 31st May 2020. The Accountant General of the Federation explained that within the period of 9th to 31st May 2020, a total of 100,005,000 naira was received through Zenith Bank, 507,753,731 naira 60 kobo was received through First Bank of Nigeria, 2,210,100 naira was received through Access Bank, and 100,107,500 naira was received through GT Bank, while details on receipt of 792,121,613 naira 89 kobo received between 1st April to 8th of May 2020 had earlier been made public. Mr. Ahmed Idris noted that this was aimed at ensuring effective and efficient coordination and management of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The federal government has raised 162.56 billion naira to help in financing infrastructure projects through the sale of Islamic bonds to local funds and insurance companies. This was made known by the Debt Management Office (DMO), noting that the federal government had planned to sell 150 billion of the sukuk in its third outing, but increased the size of the offer after it received a more than four-fold subscription. The agency stated that it is expected to issue more bonds to improve infrastructure while using the proceeds from the sale to finance 44 road projects across the country. According to the DMO, the impressive demand for the sukuk came from a wide range of investors, which included ethical funds, insurance companies, fund managers, and retail investors, among others. The federal government has said that the revision of the 2020 budget was not to impose austerity measures on Nigerians, but to improve the standard of living for the citizens. Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Prince Clem Agba, made this known in Abuja, adding that the government was working out modalities that would make economic recovery faster following devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the looming global recession. The minister explained that the major concern of the federal government was to ensure the retention of existing jobs while planning for new ones, saying the country lacked enough fiscal buffers. Prince Agba disclosed that the budget review was to move resources to productive sectors as agriculture, health, and other critical subsectors capable of generating employment opportunities and create wealth. Welcome back. My analyst on this program is Professor Ken Ife. Prof, you are welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for being here. The outbreak of coronavirus pandemic in so many countries of the world has negatively affected most economies of the world. Do you agree to this?
Correct. It's been tsunami, to say the least, and only comparable to the depression of the 1930s. And people are just confused because they don't know what to do. There are no answers to the coronavirus, no vaccine. And then they just continue to knock all the sectors. But then the stimulus package from various countries seems to be proportional to the size of the output loss in their economies, or the size of the expected recession on their economies. If you look at US, they poured in $3.2 trillion, which is about 15% of their GDP. And the UK, $330 billion, 15% of their GDP. Japan, 20% of their GDP. And Germany, about 60% of their GDP. In Nigeria, we are trying. We've only doing about 5% of our GDP so far, but we're getting there.
All right. How do you see the intervention by the federal government on all of this, the pandemic, to ensure that the spread is curtailed from the country?
There are 4 areas of federal government intervention. One is on the fiscal measures, fiscal palliatives, and the stimulus package, which tries to, if you look at the GDP of the country on the consumption side, 84% of the consumption is household consumption. Government is only 5.7%. So the fiscal measures are looking at how to conserve cash at the level of the household, because the impact of unemployment has hit the private sector more than the government sector. Government is paying salaries. So they have to make sure they adopt measures that encourage companies not to lay off workers. And then that's why they are discussing tax relief, tax rebates. They also try to conserve cash from living, which means intervening at the expense, making sure that their outgoing is reduced. So that's why some are getting moratorium on their loans. They're getting reduction in their interest rates and all of that. It's all sorts of measures there. But there is a second area, and of course, the government has also going for 774,000 jobs. That's 1,000 per local government for public works program. And that is and they're trying to inject 500 billion naira into that kind of area. The second area is to deal with the monetary policy. Where the CBN is, leading in a very robust way, actually, and they've also granted forbearance to banks to enable them restructure their loans, and then grant moratorium and even reduce the interest on their intervention funds from 10% to 5%.
To single digit, yes.
To single, yeah. So there are lots of stuff that CBN is doing. So he's put 50 billion immediately to the microfinance bank, the NISO, to distribute immediate disburse, and they're disbursing that with rapidity. But then altogether, they have a package of 3.5 trillion on the table. At least 1 trillion of that is going to the manufacturing sector, agriculture sector, and then 100 billion has been designated for pharmaceutical and the health industry. That is melted completely. Now you also have the likes of infrastructure company, which is coming up, and then they are looking to raise 15 trillion naira denominated.
For infrastructure.
Yes, for infrastructure, so that it will try and take off the burden of infrastructure from the government, and then they use the PPP mechanisms to make sure we have viable and sustainable infrastructure program and reduce the external borrowing, the cost to external borrowing from the federal government. I've been saying that the third area is the humanitarian area. And you've seen when 75,000 metric tons of grains left the strategic reserves. And more. Companies are also sending grains. You see channels without doing that. And then a lot more money to the conditional cash transfer. That's the weakest in the community. And of course, the statistics hasn't helped us that much. That over 80 million Nigerians are below the poverty line, 40.1%. So that number will get worse under the COVID circumstances because
Yes,
poverty is not lifted. Now, so they're doing their best, distributing money, distributing food, and all sorts of palliatives. Now you go to the final one, which is the presidential task force, that is everyday briefing and fighting the thing in the streets and everywhere, dealing with the shutdown, the fallouts of the shutdown,
lockdowns and the rest of them.
And all of that.
Yeah.
And of course, there is a sustainability committee led by the vice president that is looking at economic sustainability issues, at how the MDAs, and in fact, even the state government can key into a plan for recovery. So all these are happening from the government sector.
Okay. There's this argument among economists. Some school of thought are of the belief that Nigeria may not survive the pandemic, while others are saying that definitely Nigeria will scale through. What is your opinion?
Then in every circumstance, you will always have prophets of doom. You can't shut anybody up. But the fact of the matter is that Nigeria has come to stay. This will still pass.
Great.
It will pass.
Okay. What
it has done is that there is a reawakening of Nigerians, again, saying, look, we're going to have to take the bull by the horn. Nigerians are very good. Our brain works fastest when there's an emergency. I think that's something.
It's only when there's
a challenge and the emergency. So I think Nigerians are waking up to the fact that, can you imagine, in 2015, 16, when the central bank did these 42 items, delisted them from foreign exchange.
That was when the recession, recession started.
And then that forced us to start investing heavily under the Anchor Borrowers Program on rice and maize and all of those.
Yeah.
Can you imagine all these millions of tons of rice that we are now being able to grow was bringing us to the point where we are actually ready to export rice.
Honestly.
But now look at during the COVID, many of those Asian countries were not prepared to supply rice, to export rice. India would not export medicine. Everybody was holding back. So where would Nigeria have been if we had not adopted that measure?
So it's a thumb up for the federal government.
It's good. And it was pain when it started.
Yes.
But then the pain has become joy for now, temporary joy, because we need to do more.
I think the federal government is doing more because if you look at the intervention, most of the intervention are directed at the agricultural sector. But we are not talking about agriculture today. We want to focus our attention on the aviation center. As you know that the aviation sector is key in the growth and development world over, particularly in the area of the industry and employment generation. How do you think this sector should be resuscitated in the face of COVID-19?
We have a very serious problem with the aviation sector. Globally, it's a meltdown. And Nigeria, the peculiarity of the Nigerian aviation is that the FAAN, which is the Federal Aviation, has been running 22 airports. Only 2 of them are viable.
22 airports?
Yes, in the country.
Only 2 are viable?
Lagos contributes 58% of the entire revenue. Abuja contributes 19%, just breaks even. So it is the revenue of Lagos that is used to subsidize all the other 20 airports up and down the country. So if they tighten their belts, then these airports may have to close. But nobody wants that to happen because that's the only way we can go home, travel. Many people won't go by road because of the challenges on the road, the robbery. Right. The train is also very few. It's only very few areas are covered. So then the second challenge that they have is that they are self-generating their revenue. They're paying for everything. They're not getting subvention from federal government at the moment. And they're also paying not only beyond the minimum wage, they're also paying all their retired people, pension and gratuity.
Did you say
and
they're
then
paying beyond the minimum wage?
Yeah, of course. Their minimum salary, I think, is about 30-something. It's well over the minimum wage. They're above the minimum wage.
We'll continue with that. Let's just go on it. Let's go on a short break. And when we come back, we will continue. We'll take a short break now and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, and if you just join us, we are looking at the Nigerian aviation sector and the national building in relation to efficient measures that should be taken in enhancing the country's productivity. My guest is a macroeconomic analyst, Professor Ken Ife. Prof, before we went on break, you were trying to analyze the various challenges faced by the aviation industry.
Yes, I just have to say to you that if we want to travel to our various states, the safest way to go is aviation, is the airport. Okay. You're not using the road. We haven't got the rails. So there's no inland waterway. So apart from the fact that they are funding themselves 100%, they are also carrying the whole infrastructure. Aviation infrastructure, the tarmac, maintenance of the tarmac, the terminal buildings, the radar, all of that. And you know that if you go to the Lagos International Airport, it's actually an apology. Because if you go, some of the lifts are not working. The conveyor belts are not working. So, you know, there's many things that are not working. And they have to have 24/7 power from generator and petrol and all that. So the thing is, how long are you going to allow them to suffer and carry all that?
Even with the renovation that the federal government took.
Yeah, but that's loan, and they have to start repaying the loan now. Okay. So where is the money to start repaying these loans? So that's another one. Then of course you have the issue that they are being owed a lot of money, over 53 billion naira being owed to the aviation fund. So if they say, okay, we are being owed this money, turn the screw on the people who are owing us, many of the airlines will disappear, because it's still the same airlines that are owing them all that money, and some of the people occupying their properties. So they need, and then now for you to also, for government to be taxing them, you know, hoping to take 25% from a revenue that is overstretched. And also in 2011 was the last time that they increased the fee. You know, there's a tariff, the tariff for individual passenger tariff. It's takes about 10 years. Normally you should be doing that like every 3 to 5 years. So I think they now have a case to ask for an increase, and then for government to stop forcing them to take money from them, from that, because they just have to be allowed to survive. And the thing is, you are going to say, but why do we have to have 20 airports that are not viable?
If you know they are not viable, why should we?
No, the fact of the matter is that you cannot tell governors who build these airports not to travel by air. So they build it for them to be able to go from Borno. Can you imagine a governor from Borno State is going to go by road from Borno to Lagos, to Abuja? You know, come on. You know, so if they have the money or from Guzo, no, they're too far away. It's too risky to go on the road for some of those government officials. So they have to build the airports. But after a year, they find that they can't manage it. And they go and write to the president, and then the fan is told to go and take it over. So it is just something that we have to bear. So it's actually corporate social responsibility for them. But there is an opportunity for us to build aviation hubs in Nigeria.
How?
Lagos and Abuja. Aviation hubs to serve the whole of Africa and the whole of West Africa. Okay. And we have the potential. For example, Nigeria is about 70% of the economic size of West Africa, and nearly 20% of Africa. So we have enough, by the size of our economy, by our population of 202 million, to actually build a sustainable aviation hub, because people want to do business with Nigeria. But we are punching below our economic weight in the state of our aviation market right now.
Okay, let's look at the major happenings in the aviation industry. Recently, major airlines have declared their interest to reducing their workforce and also to have a salary cut. And you know, of course, that this will definitely increase the level of the already saturated unemployment situation in Nigeria, and may also cause social vices. In your view, what do you think can be done to reverse this trend?
Well, I think we have to approach gradual reopening of the aviation sector, because America is doing that. Many others are reopening now. We really need to, because if you don't, there are many things that will decay and you will not be able to reverse it again. If you don't have the staff there to be maintaining and servicing the aircraft, even as they're sitting down, then the aircraft become unserviceable. And when you now tell them to fly, they can't fly. They are no longer airworthy. So we need to now begin to apply strict measures in terms of intense sanitization protocols in the plane and all of that to ensure that we can get it. Even if it is half of the capacity of the planes that can fly, they can make up by frequency. So we need to do that to keep the jobs and to avoid collapse. Some airlines have collapsed already in UK. So there are, and those who have collapsed are irretrievable. And if you look at the revenue situation, now, one company, Zoom, you know this Zoom we are using? Last year in December, when they posted their turnover, it was just over $600 million. Now, in 5 months, it has increased to $48 billion. And it has more than 7 biggest airlines turnover put together. Because these airlines, their turnovers have flipped. So you can imagine, just overnight, one IT company is bigger than 7 biggest airlines. That's,
Again, in recent time, you know that the aviation sector says it is losing about 21 billion naira on a monthly basis. And then the
That's a lot of money.
IMF also predicted that Nigeria may go into recession at the end of year 2020. What do you think of all of this?
I don't think the question is if. It is when. We are already in recession as we speak, because the data you require for now will come in 3 months' time, by the end of 3 months' time. So what it is that, yes, IMF thought that it should be about 3.4% minus. And I saw Augusto say minus 7%, and I hear others say 10%, minus 10%. So we will go into recession. The figures will show those. But we will bounce back faster than we went in. Yes, because there is a huge reawakening right now. And I mean, the CBN, for example, is doing a lot. I've seen hundreds of thousands of hectares of farmland being mechanized by the cotton industry, the rice industry, the maize. They're investing. Despite the challenge that we have, the security challenge we have in the Northeast, banditry in the Northwest, clashes of the agro industry in the North Central, but the people are out, they're farming. Because food security is critical, to poverty reduction in the country. So there is response. And also there are qualitative and quantitative fiscal and monetary policy responses that are going to. I'm only concerned about the speed of disbursement, not the political will. The political will is there, and substantial resources have been made available. Is the fastness in the disbursement to the informal sector that I'm worried about.
Okay, let's take a look at the aircraft. Now that the federal government is planning to reopen the aviation sector, do you foresee any danger on the aircraft having packed them for over the period of the lockdown to curtail the spread of the coronavirus pandemic in the country? Do you foresee any danger on the aircraft?
I don't actually, because operational guidelines requires them to maintain the aircraft whilst they are out of service. So they are still going in. That? No, that's the operational guidelines. It's a standard operational procedure. They have to maintain them even if they are not flying. So they still have to go in and wipe down and clean and all that and do and check and do maintenance. They do. It is what they are expected to do. It's part of the operational guide. The Nigerian Aviation Authority will not allow them to fly if they have not shown evidence, the log, that they have been servicing these aircrafts. They have to be they have to be ready, flight worthy, before they are allowed to fly.
On a final note, what would be your advice to the federal government in the area of the aviation sector?
Now, the key advice is to support the aviation sector. We need to support them in the infrastructure, because it's getting very heavy. And you cannot take risks with the aviation sector, because if you take risks with the security infrastructure, many countries will not allow flights from Nigeria to come there, to their country. That's number one. And then there's no point taking risks with people's lives, because you don't get a second chance when you are 30,000 feet above the sky. So government needs to really think about how to put some resources to help them in infrastructure. Secondly, we have to exclude them from having to pay tax under the FRA, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we have to exclude them from that. Simply because they are one of the big hopes that we have to spend and continue to spend on infrastructure. Many others are just consuming. They are spending on infrastructure. They are maintaining all their staff. They are running beyond minimum wage. They are being owed a lot of money. They are servicing airports that are not viable just because they need to have the economy. It needs to have all these infrastructure in place. So one, government should support it more. Okay. Two, government should allow them to increase their fare. The passenger charge. Okay. I think it's about 1,000 or so. But they increase it to 2,000 naira. It's not much. Okay. After all, by cotton is charging 2.5 thousand, and nothing. Nobody has complained. Okay. So and then also allow them to go with their tax.
Prof, we want to thank you for finding time to be on our program.
Oh, sorry, and finally, let them have their bank, aviation bank.
There should be an
aviation development bank.
Okay.
Yes. So that the ecosystem will have an opportunity to grow and not depend on pittance from commercial banks.
All right. Thank you for being on today's program. And with this, we have come to the end of today's program. Make sure that you take responsibility against all odds against COVID-19 to have a healthy economy. Join us again for another interesting episode of your program next time. Remain blessed. Thank you.